Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Spread, October 11th, 2025. And I got to tell you, I've been hosting radio for, close to 4 years now. Hosting podcasts for 5 years. Doing the Saturday show for at least 4 years now. Don't know if I've come in as a fan with my spirits any lower coming into this radio show. It everybody knows Thursday night, one of the absolute worst Philadelphia sports nights in the history of Philadelphia sports, which is a high bar to clear. If you hear any squeaks or barks in the background, by the way, I'm dog sitting as well, so my apologies. But I don't want to talk too much about Philadelphia sports. We're going to get into that as the weeks come, as the months come. We have so much time to talk about the Eagles. That was 2 nights ago. Doesn't feel that fresh to recap a Eagles Giants loss on Thursday. And then for the Phillies, we're going to have plenty of guests to come on and talk. We're going to have Jack Fritz on. We're going to have Luke Arcani on. We're going to have Bob Wankel, hopefully. We're going to have all of our Phillies guests on in the coming months to talk about the offseason. I don't think my thoughts are collected enough to talk about who we should keep, who we should let go. We probably need to know more about what certain things look like. What I will say is at the end of this show, I'm going to rank my 7 most painful losses of the last 20 years of Philadelphia sports. Maybe that's my way of coping. I don't know what that says about me, but I've always tried to contextualize these horrible losses and just how historically bad they are. And I got to tell you, Thursday night, from a Phillies perspective, is really, really high on the list. I don't know how it wouldn't be. The way that it ended, the way they got your hopes up, everything that had to do with that game and the series, just an absolute brutal heartbreaker. And it feels in a very similar way to, I had Sean Bernard on my show 2 years ago as my co host for that 2023 Sixers playoff run. And at the end, when you lost really game 6, but when you lost game 7 to the Celtics, it felt like the window of that era for a championship closed on your fingers and it hurt. And on Thursday night, some people disagree with this, but I didn't think that the championship window just closed on our fingers. I think it chopped off our hands. I really think what we saw last Thursday, 2 days ago, was the end of an era. This group that we fell in love with in 2022 and after, even, I don't think will ever be quite the same. And I don't know if we want them to be. I certainly don't. I want them to keep a good chunk of the guys who are free agents, but they have to not only do that, they have to go out and improve the roster. I don't know if I believe in the Phillies to not only keep the right guys from last year, as we saw with the relievers they let go and who they replaced them with. That did not go well this year. I don't necessarily trust them to keep the right guys, and I also don't necessarily trust them to add the right pieces to keeping the right guys. It's just, to me, there are so many balls in the air. I hope Dave Dombrowski, John Middleton prove me wrong. The manager's another question. But as for the era, it feels over and the window feels closed. And the only way that that window swings open, that door swings ajar, is if Andrew Painter, Aiden Miller, and Justin Crawford all hit, or maybe 2 of them hit big. Those are the only ways that we're getting through this era of Phillies baseball without another drought that we've seen so repetitively in the organization's history in my lifetime and before. If you just look at the Phillies, I said I wasn't going to talk too much about it. I didn't plan this at all, and here we are. But you look at, I'm a little under the weather here, folks. I apologize. But if you look at Phillies history, it's hard to believe how irrelevant they've been for most of the time. 2012 to 2021, incredibly irrelevant. 1990 2004 to 2006, incredibly irrelevant. 84 to 92, incredibly irrelevant. This is my favorite one. And obviously, it's different era because they only really had the World Series, and the League Championship Series didn't start until 1968, I believe. But the Phillies went from 1916 to 1975, making the playoffs once, making the World Series once. I'm not going to talk too much about 1915. It's very funny to see how irrelevant the Phillies have been for most of their franchise, and I still think national media considers us like a marquee franchise because those runs they run in the '80s, the run with the Utley, Rollins Howard group, and this run they've been at the top of the sport or close to the top of the sport, and in these big games and in these big series and in these big moments and big rivalries. And I don't think most people know that this is one of the most inept franchises in professional sports. But I hope that changes, and I hope that that's different now. But we're going to talk about the Phillies going forward. Let's talk about something a little bit more positive. Let's talk about college football and about the NFL, and I'm going to give my picks in both for the weekend. I don't have huge cards in general for either college or the NFL. A quick unit update. I am 26, 20, and 1 on the year in college football at plus 9.5 units. In the NFL, I'm 41 and 32 at plus 20 units. That, by the way, that NFL number was much higher. We had a brutal week last week, so let's bounce back. Good college football week last week, bad NFL week. So let's start on the Saturday gridiron. Let's start in college football. Only one play on the 12 o'clock slate, and then again only one play on the 3:30 slate. 3 of my 5 college football plays of the day come at night tonight. So interesting little wrinkle there. But at 12 o'clock, give me the over at 52.5 in UCLA, Michigan State. UCLA has generated pressure at one of the 2 lowest rates among all Power 4 teams, right behind North Carolina. We all know how Belichick's Tar Heels are doing. Michigan State missing multiple DBs. Both those factors really help the over. Spartans ranked 12th in points per drive. Michigan State 4-1 in the last 5 to the over, 4-0 in the last 4 to the over, with an average of 72 total points per game in the last 4. Michigan State's become a little bit of an over cash cow for me, so I'm riding it again here. And I don't fully buy into last week with UCLA and their upset of Penn State. Jerry Neuheisel, one of the stories of the sport. But I do think that Jerry Neuheisel found something with Nico's legs. And UCLA, I think we can get him to 20, 24 points here. And I think that's enough to cash the over because I do think Michigan State takes care of business. At 3:30, give me the Horned Frogs. My second favorite play of the day. Give me TCU money line minus 115 at Kansas State. I'm going down with TCU ship. They're 4-1 with a close loss to Arizona State on the road at the buzzer. I feel like people in Vegas have really quit on them, and I don't get why. Josh Hoover, still one of the best quarterbacks in the country, tied for 4th in the country with 15 passing touchdowns, second among quarterbacks who have only played 5 games, inside the top 10 nationally, third among quarterbacks who have only played 5 games. And then you look at the other side of the ball. Quarterback Avery Johnson has been playing with fire. His 13 turnover-worthy throws through 6 games ties the national lead, but only 2 interceptions on the year. I think the Frogs at least get them once or twice. They've been an opportunistic turnover defense. And you look at the run game for Kansas State last week, K-State's running back Dylan Edwards only rushed 12 times for 10 yards. That is just not going to get it done against a TCU team that I think you need to be able to run the football against. At 7 o'clock, give me the Iowa Hawkeyes -3 at Wisconsin. That's a 1-unit play. This is just a full fade of Wisconsin. Iowa did really impress me against Indiana, and they had a bye last week while Wisconsin was being bullied by Michigan in the Big House. It seems like this is just the lowest that Wisconsin's been in my lifetime. I don't know why that's supposed to change in this matchup. At 7:30, my best bet of the day, the Georgia Bulldogs. Sick 'em. -3.5 at Auburn. I don't care about all the trends. I don't care about Hugh Freeze as a dog. Jackson Arnold sucks. He can run, but Georgia's run defense is great. I think it's a terrible matchup for Auburn. Georgia's being really disrespected, and I feel like their road win at Knoxville is being totally forgotten. I understand they lost to Bama. This is still a legit Bulldog playoff team, in my opinion. Go Dogs. That's my best bet of the day. My third, actually, I was going to say my second best bet of the day. Probably my third best bet of the day is the over at 56 in Michigan USC for 2 units. USC is an overs machine, 4-1 on the year, but it goes back longer than that. Lincoln Riley's 39-18 to the over at USC, the best over coach in the country in that time span. Since Michigan discovered their 5-star quarterback, dual threat quarterback has legs, their offense has really taken off. It's embarrassing that it took them that long to figure that out. But USC is outside the top 100 in rush defense against that running attack for Michigan. I think it's a bad matchup for USC's defense, just like I think USC's passing offense might be a bad matchup for Michigan's pass defense. This total should be in the mid 60s, in my opinion, and we're getting it at 56. I think we get, I don't know, 34-30, 37-34. I think it's a high scoring game. That does it for Mag 5 college football plays on the day. Recapping over 52.5, UCLA, Michigan State, TCU money line at Kansas State, Iowa -3 at Wisconsin, Georgia -3.5 at Auburn, and over 56 in Michigan USC. My leans on the day, or some of these are leans, some of them are just we're going to read the game, and I'll if I had to make a pick, this is what it is. At 12 o'clock, we've got Bama at Missouri. I would lean Missouri +3.5 there. I do think Missouri gets it done, wins the game. If this line was 6+, I'd be on Missouri. It almost worries me a little too much that there's a little too much hype on Missouri for this game. Everybody likes Missouri to win this game, and I'm probably a Bama skeptic to a point. But I don't love that everybody's against Bama. It feels like this is a spot Bama usually does well. Obviously, different coach than what I think I have in my head there, but I'm backing off of this one. It might be a live play on Missouri. I do think Missouri keeps this close. If you made me make a pick, I think they win the game, but I'm going to stay away from this one. Ohio State -14.5 at Illinois would be where I would lean in that one. Ohio State's defense absolutely shut down Demond Williams and Washington, and Ohio State is going against an Illinois offensive line here that has really struggled, really struggled to start the year, and they haven't seen anybody with as many athletes on the defensive line as the Ohio State Buckeyes, let alone the secondary and everything. You could get some coverage sacks even if you don't get the pass rush because of how good that secondary and Caleb Downs and all the guys are there. So Pitt at Florida State, I lean over 57.5 there. Florida State, pretty big favorite. I wouldn't touch a side on the game. Probably the best two games of the day. I don't have plays on. Indiana at Oregon, maybe the best play of the day or the best game of the day. Oregon, I would probably lean towards that -7.5, but Indiana really impressed me against Illinois and then came close to losing against Iowa. So it's hard for me right now to get a full read on uh, what Indiana is, and that's why I'm not gonna pick them and bet them against the team that I've called the best team in the country and the team that I've picked to win the national championship. In Red River, give me Oklahoma +1.5 at the Texas Longhorns. Let's see where this line is right now, also, and I'm gonna get you guys a John Mateer update. I'm sure they're gonna get one on game day soon. Yeah, that line's still sitting 1.5. I like. I'll be honest with you, folks. I like Oklahoma to win either way, and if John Mateer's announced in, I yeah, John Mateer's playing today. You know what? I'm adding it to the card. Give me Oklahoma +1.5 for 1 unit. I don't care if it's a square play. You don't often get me adding plays to my card live on the show, but it looks like the best odds, by the way, Action Network. If you're not using Action Network to determine what book to place bets on, you're missing out on juice. You're missing out on lines that are worse on other books. Like right now, Oklahoma +1 on MGM, on Parks, on Bet Rivers. They're a pick 'em actually. But then you get +1.5 on Fanatics, on ESPN, on DraftKings, on FanDuel. Looks like the best odds out there are FanDuel. So Oklahoma +1.5, -110 over on FanDuel. So that's where I'll be placing that one. That's a little live ad for the people. I had not seen that John Mateer news that he was definitively playing. So give me the Sooners. Nebraska -6.5 at Maryland. I think Maryland's a fraud. I think like Loxley's a fraud, and I know people will say, "Well, so is Nebraska." And I think Raiola stinks. His pocket presence is horrible. That Nebraska defense really stepped up last week, so I lean towards Nebraska getting the job done there. I wouldn't lay the 6.5 though. Iowa State -2.5 at Colorado. I lean Iowa State, but I liked Iowa State a lot last week, and they let me down, so I'm not going back to the well. NC State +23.5 at Notre Dame. I'm just saying watch out today for NC State. I don't like to say it. I feel like this game's going to end up being way closer than it should be, and it upsets me to even say that. At 7 o'clock, we've got the Florida Gators at Texas A&M. I would lean the under there at 46.5, and similar to the other SEC matchup, 7:45, South Carolina at LSU. I would also lean towards the under there at under 44.5. Now let's switch it over to the NFL, the National Football League, and I'm sad to report to the people that my best bet of the NFL slate and the entire weekend, how about them Cowboys? I hate to say it, but I got a great line over on FanDuel, -2.5, -120 this morning. Bought a half point there from -110 to -120. Give me the Cowboys -2.5 at Carolina for 5 units. Dak does well against bad teams. He's 40-13 straight up against teams under 500, 33-18-2 against the spread in those games. He's won those games by an average of 10 points per game. The big reason I love Dallas here, though, is all matchup related. I still don't believe in Bryce Young and Carolina to take advantage of the weakness of the Dallas defense. Dallas is going to beat teams without good quarterback play all year, in my opinion. Weird stat to back that up. In the games, Bryce Young has faced a struggling pass defense, which allows 250 plus yards on the season, like the Cowboys do this week. He is 0-8 as a starter. I think that says a lot. He can't take advantage of teams when that's their weakness. When Carolina wins these games, it's because they can't stop the run and they spam the run, and Bryce doesn't make mistakes, and or maybe the defense forces a lot of turnovers. When the way you have to beat a team is to throw on them and throw it through the air, they generally have not done that. Bryce Young has not done that. So if it's a shootout here and it feels like against Dallas, it has to be. Give me Dak all day long over Bryce Young. Give me the Patriots -3.5 at New Orleans. I think we're getting a 3.5 line that could be doubled in a few weeks if the Patriots continue their trajectory. Another game at 1 o'clock. Give me the over at 47 in Seattle, Jacksonville. Seattle's 4-1 to the over, surprisingly, even with a really good defense. And Jacksonville is 3-2 to the over. Jacksonville has been incredibly lucky in terms of turnovers, leading the NFL in turnovers. Obviously, you saw the 99-yard pick six against Kansas City, which basically won them the game last week. I think Seattle limits the turnovers this week and moves the ball consistently down the field. Darnold has been excellent for Seattle. I also feel confident Jacksonville can get to 24 plus in this game as well. I actually lean Seattle in this game, but I'm going with the over. And my last bet on the 1 o'clock slate, give me the Colts -6.5 against the Arizona Cardinals for 1 unit. Cardinals have lost 3 straight games by 3 points or less since 2013. We've only seen 9 teams lose 3 straight games by 9 points or less. Those teams coming off that are 1-8 and 2-7 against the spread straight up in their following game. A little fun fact for the Eagle versus Eagle coordinator matchup here. Jonathan Gannon's 14-25 as the Cardinals coach, while Shane Steichen's 21-18 in the same time span, with worse quarterback play until now with Danny Dimes, who is 3-0 against the spread as a favorite. Kyler's banged up. I think Kyler's going to play. I'd almost rather Kyler play banged up as a Colts better here than put Brissett in, but I like the Colts either way. My last bet of the Sunday slate, only 5 bets on Saturday, 5 bets on Sunday. I do have a couple of Monday night bets, but not a deep slate in terms of the bets in terms of a lot of games that I love, but I do love Georgia, TCU, the Dallas Cowboys, and my last bet of the weekend, the Kansas City Chiefs, -2.5 against the Detroit Lions. When Mahomes is -3 or shorter as a favorite or an underdog, he is 29-12-1 against the spread in his career. Since the start of 2023, Mahomes has faced an opposing offense averaging 30-plus points per game 5 times. Kansas City, 5-0 in those games, winning by 10 points per game. This is just such an obvious gambling spot to me, where Kansas City bounces back off a loss where they shouldn't have lost. They had a crazy couple. That game, you play that game 10 times. And by the way, I bet Jacksonville. I'm happy at played out the way it did. You play that game 10 times, I think Kansas City wins it 9 if it played out the way it did, kind of. It's a that was a shocking way for Jacksonville to win the game, and I think Kansas City comes out fired up about it. Detroit reading their press clippings here a little bit, you'd think. I think that Kansas City, perfect bounce back spot, kind of perfect letdown spot here for Detroit. Dome team going on the road. Apparently, it's supposed to be windy that night when Mahomes has faced dome teams in the wind. He's been excellent. I think it's like 19-2 straight up or something crazy. So I really like Kansas City. I actually like Kansas City on Sunday night more than I like any play today. So Georgia, my favorite play of the day for Saturday. I actually like Kansas City more tomorrow night. So that does it for all my plays for Saturday and Sunday. On Monday Night Football, I like the Bills -4.5 at the Falcons. Again, just feels like a perfect bounce back spot for Buffalo. I know everybody's ready to throw Philadelphia, Buffalo, and Kansas City in the trash after losing last week. I'm not quite there. So I think Buffalo kind of puts it on Atlanta here. And then I like Chicago +5 at Washington. Chicago is coming off of a bye here. I don't think Chicago's all that much worse of a team than Washington in general. So I think these teams finish kind of similar at the end of the year. So 5 points feels like a lot to get here. So I like Chicago, and I think they win the game outright. How about that on Monday Night Football? Real quick, let's get to my weekly DFS lineup of the week. I've done well, I'd say 2 of the 5 weeks, have done poorly 3 of the 5 weeks. And here is my lineup. At quarterback, I'm going with Jordan Love playing against that Bengals defense. I'm between Jordan Love or Drake May here. I keep flipping. Should I go with Love? Should I go with Love at 6,200? May a little cheaper at 5,900. I'm going with Love. I know Cincinnati is not going to make them throw deep into the second half. I kind of feel like the Saints aren't going to make New England throw deep into the second half as well. So maybe I should go May here, but I'm going with Love because I'm going to stack him with my tight end. And I'll just read that now. Tucker Kraft. I'm going with Tucker Kraft at 4,700 as my tight end. I think that he's a great value there at 4,700. My running backs, I'm going with Ashton Jeanty. He's really unlocked something in these last 2 weeks, and the Raiders are building the offense around him a little bit more. And he's going against the Titans defense that ranked 3rd worst so far in fantasy points per game given up to running backs. And then I'm going with Kyren Williams, who's playing the team that ranks 2nd in fantasy points per game given up to running backs and the Baltimore Ravens. So give me Jeanty at 6,900. Give me Kyren at 6,300. Shout out to the Irish. And then at receiver, I'm going bargain hopping for 2, and I'm going big game hunting for 1. I'm going with the most expensive guy in DFS. Give me Puka Nacua. He's the offensive player of the year. He's also playing the team that is 2nd in points per game allowed in fantasy, 2 wide receivers in the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm stacking Rams there a little bit. Maybe even think about Stafford, but didn't go with it. Going with DK Metcalf. He's just been such a big target of Aaron Rodgers so far in the 4 games he's played, averaging 15.5 points per game. He's going against a mid Cleveland defense in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers. It just feels like if Rodgers is going to have any success, DK is going to have any success. If maybe this is a game where Pittsburgh's offense just gets shut down and DK gets shut down. But if the Steelers move the ball at all, it feels like DK has to be a part of that. So 5,500, I actually think is way too low for DK Metcalf there. And another guy who kind of turned it on last week, and I have the over in this game. Give me Cooper Kupp at 4,600. He's averaging 9 fantasy points per game. He's going against the bottom 10 defense in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers in Jacksonville. So give me Cooper Kupp to take care. Just give me 10 to 15 points there. Maybe get me a touchdown. I said Tucker Kraft's my tight end. I'm going off the board. I'm going double barrel tight end at flex. This is a guy not a lot of people are going to have in their lineup, especially as a flex. Give me Jake Tonjes from San Francisco. Going against Tampa Bay, has been bad against tight ends. He has been a big target of Mac Jones. And then at defense, give me the Indianapolis Colts going against a banged-up Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett for $3,300. They've been a really solid fantasy defense to start this season. I didn't want to get here. And last and least, I said it, I'd do it at the beginning of the show, and the name of this show is Quick Picks and Painful Memories. So, in honor of Thursday night, in no order, I tried to order this, and I can't do it. It's so hard to compare these, but I had some honorable mentions, some people yelling at me about things that didn't get included. To me, these 7 losses are so far above the rest of the losses that I've dealt with in my life as a Philadelphia sports fan, that I don't even want to do a top 10 and include 3 that don't belong in the category with these 7. Starting off with Thursday night, 2025 Game 4 against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the NLDS. Don't think I need to go too deep on why that was so painful. Back-to-back double barrel here. There's, by the way, on this top 7, 4 Phillies games, 3 Sixers games. Not a single Eagles game that I would say makes my peak depressing, heartbreaking losses of the last 20 years. Game 6 and Game 7 of the 2023 NLCS. And the more I've noticed over the last couple of days, a lot of people have been doing, man, 2022 was the year. They were in the World Series. They were up 1-0. They were tied 2-2. And that's fine. They had a chance. They absolutely did. That Astros team was so good. We haven't seen a team as good as that Astros team until we saw the Dodgers. In 2023, 2024, I don't care about how good the Braves were in the regular season. Every batter that came up in that lineup, every pitcher that came out of that bullpen, every starter that started a game did not feel like an all-star in the way that it did with Houston, in the way that it did this year with the LA Dodgers. I don't get too upset about 2022 with Houston. What I get upset about and what I really think the year was 2023. You're up 2-0 in Arizona, up 3-1 on Arizona, up 3-2 on Arizona, tied with a Game 7 at the bank against Arizona, and you blow Game 6, you blow Game 7, and you let the Diamondbacks be the worst team that's went to the World Series in the last, 25 years. That is the one that will always, always stick with me. Alek Thomas, may you rot in hell, sir. And then maybe when I was doing what probably would be number 1 overall most painful loss in the history of my life, I was there in person, 2011, Game 5, Ryan Howard tears his Achilles running down to the first base line as the last play of the game. And in the same way, 2023 for the Sixers, 2025 for the Phillies, the window of championship opportunity closed so hard on my 14-year-old fingers at the time that I don't know if any heartbreak can touch that. The Utley Howard Rollins group was such a they were all legends walking on water to kids of my era because they won in 2008. They won pretty quickly into the core. Really, I guess in terms of Utley, Rollins, and Howard all being there, really 3 years into the core of that team being there, they won the ring in 08. So it bought them a lot of leeway. And I it wasn't even like a being pissed at the guys in 2011. It was just being disappointed that it was over. And it felt over after Ryan Howard tore his Achilles. He never recovered, never was the same. And yeah, so 2025 Game 4, 2023 Game 7, 2023 Game 6, 2011 Game 5. And then we get to the Sixers. 2019 Game 7, Kawhi shot. Don't need to elaborate. Sixers 2021 Game 5, for those who don't know. I had a viral tweet kind of thread going over a couple weeks in that Sixers playoff run where my girlfriend, now my wife, Caroline, was undefeated going to Philadelphia sporting events. Undefeated. And I tweeted it out a couple times, never really got much attention. Then I tweeted it out before going to, I believe it was either Game 1 or Game 2 against the Washington Wizards in the opening round playoff series. And all of a sudden, it exploded. And it went nuts. And that's how Jack Fritz found me. We had Jack Fritz on the show last week. I kind of discussed this a little bit last week. But Jack Fritz had me on WIP. The Barstool guys who I had already been calling in with for Pick Central started bringing me on the show more. And it definitely jump-started some things in terms of me getting a radio show, me getting a podcast, all that type of stuff. So 2023 Game 5 comes along. And against my better interest, we get sent to the game by the Sixers. We get bought tickets by the Sixers. And we're there. We're up 26 points at halftime. And I got a DM from ESPN asking if my wife and I are willing to, on the court after the game, interview. They would set up an interview, and they would interview us for SportsCenter about the streak. And we agreed. Sixers got in touch with us. They were going to bring us down to the court after the game. And then the Sixers blew a 26-point halftime lead. I believe it was the biggest halftime blown lead in NBA history at the time. It's definitely probably not anymore. Biggest halftime blown lead in NBA playoff history, I should say. It's definitely not anymore. I feel like in the age of the three-pointer in the last 4 or 5 years, there's no way that there hasn't been one worse. But yeah. So me personally, that might be number one personally or number two personally for me. I know a lot of people look at Game 7 and look at the Ben pass, but after that happened and after they did that to me and took that opportunity away from me, I was out on that team. I thought they were going to lose Game 6. I remember I bet against them in Game 7. I knew that there was no way that team had the heart to come back from down 3-2 in that series, and I was right. That there were Game 7. I didn't even get my hopes up before the Ben pass happened in Game 7. So Game 5 was the one that did me in 2021, which is funny, by the way. 2021, that team was not as good as the 2019 team, or nearly as good, in my opinion, as the 2023 team. The NBA was worse that year. We were the 1 seed that year. Seth Curry was like our second leading scorer, and I think we still should have probably went to the finals. And it's unbelievable to say that, but it's kind of similar to 2023 for the Diamondbacks. People love to talk about 2019. People love to talk about 2023. I think the one that got away for the Sixers may have been 2021 against the Atlanta Hawks. You were never, kind of similar to Penn State last year. You're never getting that path again to get to a finals. Even let's say we don't have to win it, you're never getting that easy of a path to get to a finals. And in 2023, they learned that when they had to go against the Boston Celtics in the second round. And the last heartbreaking loss of my list here of the top 7 is Sixers 2023 Game 6. You're up 3-2. I remember going into the game, they were like pretty presumptive title favorites in terms of the NBA Finals. And officiating and Joel not showing up down the stretch and James Harden disappearing down the stretch, and they lost. Jason Tatum snatched our soul, and we've never recovered. And I've said it 5 times on this show. Just like 2011 for the Phillies, just like 2025 for the Phillies, it felt like the window closed on our fingers right there in 2023. And so far, they have not proven us wrong. And that is the depressing way that I'm ending this depressing show. But hey, hopefully I made you some money. Hopefully we cash some bets today and tomorrow and Monday. That's going to do it, folks. Tough Cover Country.